I'm Kyle Robins, Waste Infrastructure Manager at Thames Water. My role is to look at the long-term strategy for managing supply and demand on sewage networks and also serviceability to customers. I want to talk to you a bit about a widespread sewer flooding problem in West London that I've been working on for a few years now, known as the Countess Creek. Countess Creek itself is actually one of the lost rivers of London. An old river tributary of the Thames, and now forms part of the sewage network. Where we are with this pilot trial, we're very much, I suppose, thinking of the wheel that Chris has just been through. We're probably at the moving into the sort of feasibility stage, so we haven't actually implemented anything in the ground yet, but a lot of thought and thinking has gone on, and I want to share some of that with you today and show you where we've got to and where we think we need to get to next. So I'm going to go through a bit of the background to the problem and how we arrived at sustainable drainage and a need to do some pilots to understand how it fits in with an overall least whole life cost way of balancing supply and demand in this particular area and eliminating sewer flooding. I want to talk a little bit about what role can such retrofit play, although I think we're all clear on that. I want to talk a little bit about what we want to achieve from the pilot that we're doing, our own pilot trial, because we can't answer everything. We've got a view of what we want to get out of it, which I'll share with you. The approach, we've already spoken about opportunistic and strategic SuDS in the guidance, and we've actually followed that. It's been very helpful in framing our own thinking about how to address this, and some of the next steps that we plan to take. So. The Countess Creek itself, as I mentioned, one of the lost rivers of London, sits on the boundary of Kensington and Chelsea and Hammersmith and Fulham. It's a highly urbanised environment. There's lots of basements. In fact, that's probably the main problem in the area. We've got lots of people living now below ground, very close to the level of the sewer, and the sewers don't need to rise very much before people start to flood and we get surcharge in the sewers. We've got combined sewage networks, all the rainfall and sewage goes into the same network. There's no local water courses in this area for us to discharge surface water to. Everything goes into the sewage network and pumped out into the river currently. Some of the initial work that we did shows that urban creep is an issue. We looked at some aerial photography and found, quite surprisingly, that over the last 30, 40 years or so, we've seen over 20% increase in impermeable area, people paving over front gardens, all that sort of thing, which has certainly made the problem worse. And we have this deeper storm relief sewage network in the Countess Creek area underneath it, which sort of adds to the complexity of understanding what's going on and what the right mix of solutions is. So we look at looking at the plan view of the area, where we're discharging out into, currently in the Hammersmith area, which is the picture on the left, our CSO there, and on the right-hand side in South Fulham, pumping station at Lots Road, where we discharge out. The little dots on there are properties that have flooded. We've got records of around about 2,000 properties in this area, so it's a widespread problem, lots of basements. It's taken a lot of time to talk to all these customers and go around, knock on doors, get the information, and we're still trying to find more. We think there's more out there, and we know that customers are wary about reporting flooding and coming forward. But we have around 2,000. So yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big issue to Thames Water, and something we want to resolve in the most sustainable and least cost ways to reduce impact on bills. So what I'm showing here is this is a very complex network. I've already mentioned we've got local sewers, we've got trunk sewers, we've got deeper storm relief sewers, and unpicking that and working out, well, if we're going to do sustainable drainage, we've got to do it, and we're going to retrofit it. We need to put it in a place where it's going to have some immediate benefit. In the long term, we might want to do it, across the entire our entire area. But to get some momentum going behind, showing people that it can work, what it can do, we think we've got to be quite careful and selective at first as to where we target it. So we start with this mess of water flowing in various directions and flowing over into the different weirs and settings that we have on the network. And that profile can change depending on where the rainfall's tracking from. If it's coming from the southwest or the north, it can change. And the intensity of the rainfall as well can cause the flow to change. So it's a very complicated problem to solve. But what we've started to do is to really break the area down into manageable chunks that we can start to see wherever we've got parts of the catchment that, the trunk sewage network is completely full. If we did anything there with sustainable drainage with the best will in the world, the next rainfall event, all that effort would probably come to nothing, and the flooding would still occur. So what we're able to do in some of the work that we've done and the modelling, and I won't go into the detail of that today, I'm not a modeller and I'd probably fail miserably to explain how we got to this. But we're able now to identify areas of the catchment where it is actually a local capacity issue and not the fact that the trunk sewage network's full. And those are the areas where we think we could get in and start to look at sustainable drainage and retrofit as part of our overall package of measures that we want to roll out. So, what role can SuDS play? Well, I think we're all clear on that. Potentially, it could form part of a lower whole life cost solution, so offsetting the costs of some of the grey infrastructure that we as a water company would traditionally do. It's a means of increasing headroom on the network as we start to plan for the future and look at climate change. The role sustainable drainage has to play is it could help to manage that headroom so that we adapt the network for climate change and reduce the peaks in the future. It is an opportunity for us to work with customers in a way that, as a water company, perhaps we've never done before, and more on that in a bit. And certainly working with the new local flood authorities and other stakeholders. It encourages innovation. It's a different way of thinking, and there are wider benefits that perhaps. I'm focusing today on sewer flooding, and most of what we've done in this project today has been around understanding how SuDS can reduce peaks in the sewage network and reduce the risk of flooding. But we've got issues such as biodiversity and the heat island reduction that we're only beginning to understand, I think, what wider role SuDS can play in that. So what are we trying to achieve from our pilot? As I mentioned before, I don't think we can answer everything in one go. But the key thing that we're trying to do, and the question that we're trying to answer is, can we retrofit SuDS in a highly urbanised environment? Can we squeeze it into some of the streets, the photographs that I showed just now, in typical streets in London where there's very little, no front gardens necessarily, you've got stairwells, a real challenge. But that's what we're going to have a go at and try and do. How acceptable are these solutions to customers? We already talked about, can we add extra value through urban design? Can we offer something to customers that actually they grow to love, something that maybe is different? Because if this is going to be potentially a lower whole life cost way of dealing with flooding, then we've got to get some momentum behind customers that they can see that this is an attractive proposition. What are the costs? The key thing for us, we need to understand, if we're looking at a lowest whole life cost, what's the extent of SuDS? How much can we do? How much can we retrofit? And what are the costs associated with that, so that we maximise the benefits and the cost-benefit ratios that we're expected to demonstrate to our regulator. Can we work with planning policies? And by that I mean things like, we've already spoken earlier about conservation areas, and maybe in certain circumstances being different isn't the right thing. We might find some of the streets that we're going into actually making it invisible, but delivering the output that we want in terms of reducing the runoff might be the way to go. we want to understand a bit about how performance of SuDS changes over time. We could spend some time and effort enthusing communities here, delivering something. We walk away 6 months later and we, for whatever reason, don't see the benefits that we anticipated. So we need to understand that. And really, as a planner, I suppose, looking at the long term, I want to understand how scalable and replicable might SuDS retrofit be. How can I scale this up into something, and how long will it take? How much will it cost? How do I get that into a forward program? So we've already talked about opportunistic and strategic SuDS. For us, the opportunistic SuDS, and we followed the manual. It's really a process by which we can test and showcase technology. We will struggle, I think, to go into a street and infuse a community unless customers know what we mean by sustainable drainage. I mean, the word SuDS isn't necessarily a very customer-facing way of explaining what we're trying to do. But there's no better way of explaining to customers what we're on about until we get some actual photographs and physical things that they can see and feel and understand. We want to understand buildability. By that I mean we might be working on private properties within customers' curtilage, and that might limit the sort of things that we can do and how we build things together. We've got some examples here of some planters that we've developed where we've been testing to see what sort of runoff reductions we might be able to expect. And in our opportunistic program, we've also contacted some customers and started that process of working out what it is that incentivises them to participate in a trial. What sort of things would they want us to deliver? And the wording of agreements that naturally we'll ultimately end up having or requiring customers to sign up to. How do they feel about that? So we've used opportunistic SuDS through various sort of contacts with lead local flood authorities and so on to identify areas where we can start to test, I suppose, some of the things that we want to roll out. Going on to the actual strategic pilot. So what we want to do is to roll out and retrofit sustainable drainage solutions on 3 streets. We set ourselves a goal of 3 streets over the next year or so. And we've started with a long list of 14. And we got to that list of 14 through a process of looking at a wide range of different criteria. Key point is we're not going for quick wins here. So we're not looking for a street and, oh look, there's a park and we'll go and put a rain garden in it. We're setting ourselves a bit more of a challenge than that, because we want to do something that we know that we can walk away, check the results and scale it up. So no quick wins. We're looking for something that's representative of the housing stock in the wider area. So going back to some of those photographs, the typical streets that we find in the area. We're looking for discrete parts of the network. By that I mean, going back to that diagram I showed you earlier with all the lines going all over the place, if we put some flow monitors in there and tried to measure what the impact of SuDS is, we'd struggle if this flow's coming from all over the place. So there are parts of the network where it's easier to measure the benefits of, so we can see how the runoff reduces over time. We're looking to monitor control streets as well. So in this diagram, a typical a street that we want to select, we go in and we're planning to go in and retrofit sustainable drainage, but then a street next to that we'd continue to measure as well, so that when we do get a rainfall event, we've got a control to see how effective the SuDS measures are. We've got agreements that we'll need to draft. We're thinking at the moment we'll need to maintain and operate these for the purposes of the trial for a year to get the customers interested. And we're not at the moment thinking of willingness to pay in the future maintenance. We want to get the SuDS, the retrofit the SuDS, get them in, get them working before we start the process of understanding how customers value them. I think one step at a time, I think, would be what we're advocating. Stakeholder engagement is absolutely key. I'm not going to dwell on this slide. I mean, we have an independent group of professors who've been advising us. We have started relationships with lead local flood authorities and looking to form sort of partnerships for these, and we've had a number of public meetings. But for me, actually, this is the key slide for me. If I was to ask you to, when you go away today, to remember one thing, I think this is it. And you know, this isn't how we want to work. I mean, I've dealt with a number of projects where we want the customers to, you know, to take up the offer of what we're doing, and knocking on doors in high-vis jackets isn't the way to do it. We've been working closely with London Sustainability Exchange, and they're advocating a community development approach, which is very new to us. We're quite enthusiastic, quite excited about it. How that will work is we tap into the local community either through an event of some form, either through a school, Hester Power, whatever you want to call it, and within those communities then find advocates who we can start to help to really sort of spread the message within the communities and the streets that we're targeting. That's a very different approach for us, a very different place for us to be in as a water company, but I know from, you know, trying to deliver schemes such as these that approach is very difficult, and so anything that we can do to I mean, Chris spoke earlier about it taking 2 years to get to a point where customers had agreed on the measures. I think the more that we can do with innovative approaches such as this, the better. We are going to be doing flow monitoring, as I've already mentioned, for the streets that we're targeting. So pre and post monitoring we're going to do. We want to install some quite high-tech flow monitors and gauges so that we really get some good data back, because I think there's going to be quite a bit of interest in the data that we get, and we want it to be, you know, stand up to external scrutiny and academic rigour. And we may even share the results from the flow monitoring via our website, so customers can actually see how the measures that they've agreed to have implemented in those houses, the effect that they're having, something that we're considering. So, to summarise then our next steps, we're at a feasibility stage, I would say. The next steps for us are to find ways into local communities to test enthusiasm to participate in a SuDS retrofit trial. We need to take our 14 streets down to 3. We're looking to deliver surface water management measures sometime in early 2013, with a view to really getting some results back that will help us start to inform our proposals to our regulator, Ofwat, in the next price review in 2014. That's what I had to say. So.